CEO in the mid-level or top echelon or upper echelon as a business owner. Thank you so much for joining. Those of us from YouTube and LinkedIn, thank you so much for joining. Those of us on Instagram, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to our first official broadcast. And today we are going to be teaching you challenges CEOs of top and mid-level organizations face at Q1 and how to mitigate them. We're very aware that as CEOs in the beginning of the year, there's a lot of activity around planning for a successful year, both financially, both productivity wise, both profitability, and all the different indices that you pay attention to as a CEO in a new year. We are aware that all of those activities are going on. But we do also recognize that aside from the activities going on to prepare you as a CEO for a productive 2023, both financially and output of your staff, it's also worthy to note that there are challenges that you may face. And that's why we want to, with this live broadcast today, bring to the fore what some of these challenges are and what you should do to mitigate them. Challenges will continue to exist, but if you are armed with the exactitudes of what to do, then it is easy for you to truly be able to get the results that you want to see in your business. And so moving on very quickly, challenge number one. In the beginning of the year, most CEOs of mid-level and top-level organizations battle with the fact that their team members are not usually on the same page with them as far as the strategic objectives. If you're a CEO in the mid-level and top-level organization, you would understand what I mean. Wherein you are trying to cast the vision for the year, and it feels like there's a back and forth as far as the understanding of the vision of the strategic objective of your colleagues or of your team members. And so what usually happens is that most CEOs are always having meetings, brainstorming sessions, strategy meetings, just trying to bring the team to the same level where they are at as far as the decisions they have made at the management level. And so that usually would pose a challenge because there's a drag between what the CEO sees and what the team members or the employees see as far as the strategic goal or objective is concerned. And so as a business owner, what then, or as a CEO, what then do you do when you notice that the people who you have hired to work with you to deliver your strategic objective can't seem to see what exactly you are trying to achieve with your business? Before we talk about that, it's worthy to note that there's a statistics that say that 85% of most employees are motivated when the internal communication is very effective. Let me say that again. 85% of employees are mostly very effective when the internal communication is very crystal clear, meaning that an employee is able to bring to the fore or bring to the table their best ever if the internal communication is crystal clear. That means what the CEO wants to achieve versus what they truly see as how to achieve what it is they have been told, you have told them to achieve. There has to be a synergy, an alignment in what you see versus how we see it. And you see, it's one thing to have very laudable goals as a CEO of a mid-level or a top-level organization. But what is most important is how does this big goal cascade into daily execution for your team members? Because if the goal is big and they seem to understand it without a clear daily execution goal, what would happen is your strategy will, at most times, you keep going back to have strategy meetings back to back, and you are hitting brick walls. Why? Because there's no synergy between what you want to achieve and what they see, and in relation to how to achieve what you see. Do you see what I mean? And so how then do you mitigate this? Very simple. A clear execution blueprint. As a CEO of a top-level and mid-level organization, if you want to mitigate this, dichotomy between what you see and what your team sees, what you should do is have a clear execution blueprint. Meaning that as a CEO of a mid-level or top-level organization, whatever the strategy is, what is the step-by-step that each team member must bring to the table to get it done? Let me make this very simple. So let's say that your strategic goal as a CEO of a mid-level or a top-level organization is to enter into two new markets in quarter one. and then to increase your revenue by say 20% in this quarter one. After you have broken down the strategies to achieve this, you are now going to create an execution blueprint that apportions who does what as far as the market entry is concerned. So if you're trying to enter Ghana from a Nigerian market, you're going to have to break down all the strategies that you want to deploy to enter into Ghana. Say maybe a hiring of a promoter in Ghana, a hiring of an influencer in Ghana, the entire marketing storm in Ghana, all the different activities that you may have lined up to truly enter into those new markets. You have to have a step-by-step and then apportion somebody to handle the step-by-step. Beside the person apportioned to handle the step-by-step, there has to be an accountability system. That means that what's the duration of them achieving what is written in their execution blueprint, who are they accountable to, and what is the duration between the accountability comes to maturity. A clear execution blueprint will bridge the gap between what you, the CEO, sees and what the employees truly want to action in your business. So if you want to do 20% increase in your revenue as a CEO of a mid-level or a top-level organization, the simple way, aside from creating a strategic objective and all the entire strategy to bring it to pass, you have to have a clear execution blueprint so that every department will have their own portion of the execution blueprint, and there's an overarching accountability system watching everything on that overarching execution blueprint. And I know that as a CEO, you're wondering, but how is that my job to create an execution blueprint? And most times, because you work with a diverse team, a lot of times it may take longer for people to be able to come up with the step-by-step. Now, what most organizations always do is they will say, you, pricing, give us your strategy for the year. You, finance, give us a strategy for the year. You, HR, give us a strategy for the year. And so all the different, objectives are scattered across teams, and each team is required to bring their own strategy to the table for execution in the year. What this usually causes is a drag, because most times as the CEO of a top level or mid-level organization, the more they keep submitting it, the more you keep going back and forth and saying, well, this doesn't add up to what I truly want to achieve. Do you see what I'm saying? And so there's a back and forth, back and forth. After a while, what begins to happen is you now begin to achieve results through the lens of what your team has created as a strategy. Do you see why this is a bit, it's a bit dicey? Except, of course, you have super experienced hands who are able to distill your vision into actionable plans. Except, of course, you have that. If you do not have that as a mid-level CEO or a top-level CEO, it is very advisable you bring in a consultant whose job is to help you design your go-to market strategy that would also hand you the entire execution blueprint. It will save you a lot of hassle. It will save you a lot of back and forth. It will save you a lot of repetition as far as your revenue cycle is concerned. That means that if you did 10% last year and you want to increase to 30% in revenue this year, you cannot use the same strategies you're using for 2022 for 2023. And that would mean that you'd have to go out there to say, I need a consultant to help me truly create the entire overarching strategy, factoring in all the different departments I have in my company, and then creating an execution blueprint for each of those departments so that there can be an overarching onboarding session with the entire organization. Now, if you're a CEO of a mid-level organization, a top-level organization, and this sounds fantastic to you, and let me attempt to make this very simple. What I mean by that is, as a CEO, in sitting with you and you say, I want to do 20% increase in revenue from 2022. We begin to look at everything that you did in 2022. How did you fare? What was the biggest market you had advantage over? What is the size of your current market share? What is the size of the overarching market share where you play in? And then what do we need to do to move you from where you are at to where you need to be? Then we begin to identify all the departments that would play an active role in making this happen. Once we do that, we then create a strategy where each of them will be involved and an execution blueprint where week in, week out, they know exactly what to do to drive them closer to the 20% increment in revenue that you want to achieve. Now, does this sound very simple as a CEO? Absolutely. If this sounds simple, I think that one of the things you should do is you can book a strategy session with us at a Just a Bit Company where we would work with you to create an overarching market penetration strategy or revenue growth strategy for your company so that by Q1 2023, you two are on an upward trajectory as far as achieving your revenue goal is concerned. Now, that's challenge number one. Challenge number two that CEOs face in Q1 is breaking out of the previous year's results. Breaking out of the previous year's results in terms of productivity and revenue. I find that most times, most CEOs find it difficult to break out of the chain of the result they achieved in the previous year as far as execution in this new year. So you find that people are, trying to get accustomed to the fact that there's going to be a change in system, change in strategy, change in, what is required of you. And then there's always a drag there. So you find that CEOs are saying, we're doing 20% more this year, but the team members are still used to working with how they worked last year. Do you see what I'm saying? And so their results, their productivity, their outcomes is still a lot of times linked to their previous results for the previous year. So as a CEO, what then do you do to mitigate this in your company? What you need to do is you must set up an accountability system and a reward system as a CEO. An accountability system and a reward system. Anything that doesn't get tracked doesn't get done. Let me say it again. Anything that doesn't get tracked doesn't get done. Now, I know that most CEOs of mid-level companies and top-level companies are not directly involved in the day-to-day running of the company. And by that, I mean that you may have created reporting lines or reporting systems where there are strategic managers who handle all of these things. But you see, while you're having those managers in place, you also have to have an accountability system, down, up, and up, down. Do you see what I mean? An accountability system down, up, and up, down. Meaning accountability system from those who are at the lower part of the team doing the work to the managers, and an accountability system from you, the CEO, down to the managers, so that you don't leave the entire running of the organization to just the managers because you're like, well, I pay her so well, so she should do her job great. That's not how it should run if you truly want to be able to break out of the cycle of your previous year's results. So you must track accountability down, up, down. Create a system where both those who are down know that they have to deliver based on the new strategy that your team has created and based on the new measurement system that you have put in place to measure how much work they are putting into the new strategy that you have designed for your organization. I also do want to note here that every time a new strategy is designed, it is worthy to note that it's not alone for the CEO to understand it. The last person in the organization must understand it. Meaning that if you have to spend a lot of time doing a lot of onboarding with every member of your team till they get it, and if that takes longer than normal, invest time in that. Because those who are going to drive the entire result are those who work with you, especially as a CEO of a top level and mid-level organization. You're not the one who is necessarily going to be doing the everyday work, following after customers, bringing those reports, bringing the feedback system. You're not necessarily the one who's going to be doing that. So those who are going to be doing that, you must make sure that you invest your time until they understand the entire strategy for the year. Okay, and that would mean that while you're having your onboarding sessions with your team members as far as the strategy is concerned, do well to make sure that the head of each team understands what it is that you understand. Because as CEOs, a lot of times we have fantastic visions in our heart, fantastic goals, fantastic desires. And each time we speak, we believe that our team members should get it. Most times they don't always get it. And so what happens when you begin to see their reports come in and you begin to read their reports, you're like, no, this is not what we agreed. And your team members will say things like, but this is what I understood. That happened to you ever before as a CEO? That's what I thought, or that's what I understood, or that's what I believed I should have done. A lot of those sort of feedbacks. So what you should do during your onboarding sessions is to say, this is what I want to achieve. This you think, what do you understand by what it is we're saying here? So that you begin to hear from people within your team what their understanding of the strategy is. Once you know that there's already a synergy between what they understand and what you're trying to achieve, then you have a working document vis-a-vis an execution blueprint that everybody in the entire organization can run by. Until there's a synergy in vision with you, the CEO, the managers, and everybody on the team, you cannot achieve an increase in your revenue. And as we go further into this conversation, I'll share with you some very alarming statistics as a CEO of the top level and a mid-level organization that you must pay attention. They are very alarming statistics that if we don't pay attention to them, they have the capacity to derail our revenue goals and our revenue target in 2023. As you stay on throughout this conversation, I will share some of those, alarming statistics with us. And so that's challenge number 2. Challenge number 3 is I find that in the beginning of the year, most team members are engulfed in their own life plans and how to achieve this. Yes, I find that in the beginning, just like you as a company have goals, plans, the employees who work with you, they also sat down in the beginning of the year and they created New Year's resolution for themselves, New Year plan for themselves, New Year goal for themselves, New Year visions for themselves. So look at an organization is a sum total of several employees working together to deliver on the organization's goals, organization's objectives, organization's strategy. Now, the people who make up this team are individuals themselves with plans, with visions, with desires, with goals, with strategic objectives. So at the beginning of the year, one of the challenges CEOs face is that employees are engulfed in their own life plans and how to achieve it. Because most times they will go to maybe church or mosque, or they would have those personal retreat times where they say to themselves, this year I have to do better. And they come up with exotic plans to make it happen. And so there is the employee who works for you, works with you, but also has a life that they are figuring out in their minds how to bring to pass. And so you find that most times, because they're engulfed in that entire plan in their mind, it's January, don't forget. And it usually would happen in the beginning of the year, in the first quarter of the year. And so what will begin to happen is you see an employee who ordinarily should give 100% as far as productivity is concerned, will now begin to give 70%, 50%, 40%. You're wondering what's going on. Pick up the slack. It's a new year. I don't want this sort of behavior. You know, as CEOs of mid-level and top-level organizations, we see this happen. Sometimes queries, sometimes shredding, sometimes all the different things we'll do to our employees because they're not picking up the slack. My job here today is to show you why that happens so that you don't go through the cycle of frustration, trying to bicker, trying to shout, trying to shred, trying to query. But if you understand that this is what is going on, it is easier for you to now mitigate this, or better still, help your employees navigate the times that they are in. Now, how do you handle this? But before we go into how you handle this, very quickly, employee engagement. How to handle this is employee engagement. Now, let me give you some very alarming statistics. According to the latest Gallup report, it says only 36% of employees are engaged. Look at that. Out of 100, 100% workforce is required to give you the productivity, the revenue goal you want to achieve. But Gallup is saying that only 36% out of this 100 are engaged. Meaning that the other 64 that come to work, they are either disengaged or fully disengaged. Look at that. That's report number 1. Gallup says at least 36% of employees are engaged. Then it says 51% are disengaged. That's a terrible thing. And that's a Gallup report. In fact, if you look at their report from 2017, 2018, 2019, you would notice that the employee engagement percentage was reducing drastically. Increased. From 2017, they had an 85%, disengagement percentage. Then it began to move from 85 to 75 in the next year. In the next year, 65. So it is increasing. That means employees are becoming better engaged through the different things that I would show you as we go through today's conversation. But what need to note? 36% are engaged, 51% disengaged, 13% actively disengaged. This is the most dangerous part. Actively disengaged. Because these ones who are actively disengaged, it's just a matter of time they will leave. And they cost your organization huge amounts of money when they leave. And I'll show you why or how as we go through today's conversation. Now, it's important to note that it's important to have a highly engaged workforce because a highly engaged workforce increases your profitability by 21%. This is what studies have said. That a highly engaged workforce increases your profitability by at least 21%. It also increases your productivity by at least 17%. So that means you have looked at all the goals you want to achieve as a CEO of a top level or a mid-level organization. And then you have within your team maybe a 51% disengaged workforce. What has happened already is that you have hampered your ability to even increase your revenue by any percentage. Because a disengaged workforce is a disgruntled workforce and they can't help you achieve your goals. So what you begin to see is a repeated cycle of you, the CEO, being frustrated, saying the same thing again and again and again. You know why I'm teaching you this? So that when you begin to see this as a CEO of a mid-level and top-level organization, you will remember very actively that, the lead consultant at the Justified company mentioned this, and she also said how this can be solved. Because it's one thing to know, it's another thing to know how to solve it. As I go further again, I'll give you a very absolute way to put an end to this in your organization. Like I said, one of the ways to solve this is employee engagement. And I went further to give you the statistics of Gallup report that shows the level of engagement and disengagement of the global workforce, right? And then it goes further to say that how a disengaged workforce, how it truly affects your team is number one. How it affects your team members. Number one, it lowers their sense of responsibility. It lowers their sense of responsibility. A highly disengaged workforce, they don't feel like they're responsible for the results you have outlined. Honestly, they just feel like, well, let me come here and just mark register every day and mark attendance every day. Whether the goals are achieved or not, as long as they get their salaries, they're fine. And I know that as a CEO, you say, well, if they're not delivering, I'm going to terminate their appointment. It's easy to say that until you go back and look at how much it costs you to actually keep an employee, how much it costs you to develop them, how much learning and development costs, how much research and development costs, how much it takes you to actually hire a new set of staff and train them and onboard them. It's a lot of money as a CEO. So it's important that you pay attention to making sure the ones you have are actively engaged. So if a person doesn't feel, if they have a low sense of responsibility and they're in your team, what will happen is their productivity will be low. Then another thing that happens when a staff is disengaged is they have incessant errors. Incessant errors in their work, in their reports, in their deliverables, incessant errors. Another thing that happens is they miss deadlines back to back. And you know why this is very difficult, why this is very terrible for a CEO of a mid-level and top-level organization. Once these things happen, it cascades into the bottom line of your company as a CEO. And when that happens, you feel the brunt of the difficulty the most. Yes, because as a CEO, you're the one who's thinking about the salaries you pay at the end of the month. You're the one who's thinking about your customers that are dissatisfied. You're the one who's thinking about your goods that are on the shelf and they are not going. You're the one who's thinking about your customers that are not responding. You are the one who is the most affected by this. So you cannot say it doesn't concern you. You cannot say, well, the only solution is to let them go. There are better ways to achieve this because the hands you have can actually deliver the results you have for you. Please stay with me to the end of this session. I'll tell you an absolute way to mitigate everything that we have discussed today. Right? The fourth thing that happens when a person is disengaged and it's your team member is they have poor customer service. Poor customer service. They relate with your customers the way they like, the way they feel. Sometimes I enter into certain companies and I see the interaction of the team members with the customers and I'm blown away. When I say blown away, I'm blown away in shock. That where is the CEO of this company? How come there's no system of measuring what your staffs are doing at the open end of your customers? How come? And listen, it cuts across CEOs of top-level organizations, banks, and multinationals, finance houses. Literally, it cuts across the biggest organizations within the context of the country and the continent and the globe. The front-end people are doing whatever they like because the CEOs are not there to checkmate them, and there's no system of accountability to make sure that disengaged staffs are paid attention to. Most times, the people who are perpetrators of this sort of, abnormal service with customers are not necessarily bad people. They're just disengaged. And if you don't have a system to make sure you have an engaged workforce, they will keep destroying the reputation of your organization as far as the customers they are facing repeatedly. Like I have gotten so tired of seeing this sort of behaviors with organizations. The other day, I went to one of the very top banks. And I was shocked at the way the staff was behaving, unchecked. And the supervisor was seated right behind the staff. And when I noticed that the behavior of the staff was going out of hand, I beckoned on the supervisor. I said, Mister, this person reports to you. Can't you see what is going on? And guess the report the person gave me. He says, see, I have a lot on my desk. Only me is here. I handle this person, that person, that person's report. How am I going to do it? This was the supervisor legitimately pouring out their frustration to a customer of their bank. And I put my hands on my chin. I'm like, oh God, where is the CEO of this company? Where is the CEO of this company? It's just a matter of time. I'm telling you. Because bad service, after a while, it culminates. And before you know it, one customer who walks away disgruntled, we go and pick up a megaphone and shout to the ends of the world how bad your organization is. In fact, that's even easy. That's even very subtle. We are in the era of social media. One tweet can destroy your reputation. One singular tweet by an influencer. So as a CEO, what do you do about disgruntled or disengaged staff? Not disgruntled now, disengaged staff. Now what happens is that at the end of the day, when you have noticed low sense of responsibility, errors at work, missed deadlines, poor customer service, low profits, what begins to happen is most of these disengaged staff, especially the actively disengaged ones, they eventually resign. And when they resign, you know what it will do? It will cost you so much money because you have to reinvest in hiring, in training, in onboarding. You have to reinvest money in all of these things. In fact, time also as a company. So how then do you tackle this? Before we go, there are other things that actually affect employee engagement. And I'm going to speak to just three things so that as a CEO of a top level or a mid-level organization, you can quickly look through your company and say, do I have this actively in place? There are three major things I'm going to discuss today that affect your employees' engagement. Remember why we're talking about employees' engagement is because these are challenges you will face in this beginning of the year. Right? And these challenges, the idea of today's class is to teach you what to do to mitigate these challenges. There are three major things that I want to speak to today that affects employee engagement. Number one is the culture of the organization. As a CEO of a mid-level and top-level organization, are you particular about the culture of your company? Are you? Or is your company anything goes? Or is your company whatever the CEO says stands? Is there a culture that is interactable, that is tangible, a culture that is very crystal clear and transparent, that everyone who comes in sees very clearly how this will lead to this, will lead to that, will lead to that, and how they are being here literally guarantees that they are on the right path in destiny. Because whether you like it or not, the person who works for you and works with you has a life. Yes, they are there to probably earn a living with your company and probably build with you, but they also do have a life. One of the things about the future of work is organizational culture will be the most competitive thing in industries. Let me say it again. One of the things about the future of work is organizational culture, right? Will be the vehicle of competitiveness. I need to say that again for us as CEOs of mid-level and top-level organizations so that you need to pay attention to this. Organizational culture will be the currency of competitiveness in the future of work. That means that people will stop moving from company to company just because of pay rise. They will begin to move from company to company because of culture of the organization. Yes. That means human beings will begin to look at their own lives and how it matters and being a part of an organization that helps them move further in their own life. That's why you must pay attention to culture. So this is the beginning of the year. What workplace culture do you want to create and imbibe in in your organization? What company culture do you want to create and imbibe in the lives of every person who works with you? These are questions that as a CEO you must answer and answer accurately. And in determining that, you have to create a system that makes sure that that culture is cascaded to the least person in the organization. You have to make sure that that culture is cascaded to the least person in the organization. It's not just to say, I want to make sure that this place is very interactive. This company is very interactive. Everybody feels like they are growing. It's not enough to verbalize it. After verbalizing it, what's the strategy? Who is going to work the strategy? Who is going to be accountable for working the strategy? What's the measurement system for that strategy? CEO, do you see the amount of work It's required to actually build a functional culture that will make your organization competitive. For some of your disengaged staff, let me tell you, the culture is the reason why they're disengaged. Yes. If you're in your workforce, there are 64. Gallup is about one of the, one of the most viable organization when it comes to strengths of companies, right? Strengths generally. And if Gallup says that only 36% of employees are engaged, that means 64 are disengaged. One of the prevalent causes of disengaged staff is culture of the organization. So if at January as a CEO of a mid-level and top-level organization, you don't have a culture that is prevalent, or you don't even have a plan to introduce a culture that will keep your employees engaged, you're already setting up yourself for failure, or you're already setting up yourself for major attrition. Because, like I said, the future of work, the currency of competitiveness is organizational culture. It's no longer going to be, oh, I'm going to get better paid there. No, it's moving. Because the workforce is ever dynamic, just as the average customer is ever dynamic. The workforce is dynamic. There's the Generation Z, all the alphas that are coming behind us. Believe me, those guys are going to pay attention to culture. And some of them are your employees today. So you're wondering why these guys don't just get it. They always act this way. They act this way. It's because you don't understand that the future of work needs culture that is engaging. And you need to realize that if you're going to stay in business as a CEO of a mid-level and a top-level organization, you need the Generation Zs. You need the Generation Alphas coming. So you're not going to say, well, I can't deal with them, let them go. No, you're going to evolve your system to accommodate them, to work with them, to get the best out of them as a CEO of a mid-level and top-level organization. And no, these things are not far-fetched. They're not far-fetched. They're so easy to achieve with the right consultant on your team. They're super easy. It's just a couple of strategy sessions, drawing up an execution blueprint with an accountability system. You too will see how actively this can begin to cascade into your organization. Do you see why this is so important? And that's number one. Number two, factors affecting employee engagement. Number two is managers. Managers. Line managers a lot of times have become demigods in themselves. Demigods that are stifling the growth, the productivity, and even the output of your employees. And so it may mean that as a CEO of a mid-level or a top-level organization, it's important to begin to pay attention to the quality of managers that you hire or appoint, as the case may be. And you have to create a parameter or an appraisal system that allows them truly cascade what you want cascaded into your employees. And let me explain how you see this very easily as a CEO of a mid-level or top-level organization. Say you find that you have a manager who is interacting with a staff of yours, and that manager can't seem to be the one that gets the best out of their team. And every time you come in or you step in, the team seems to do better and respond better and give better results. Every time you begin to see that, know that there's something wrong at the managerial level. Don't be quick to sweep it under. Don't be quick to take excuses like, well, it's because they don't want to work. That's why they're not responding. Don't be quick to swallow excuses like that. You have to make sure that there's a system to check the managers you have hired. It's important, dear CEO, because the investment in the company is first solely yours. And so it means that you have to invest time. You have to invest time and effort to pay attention to the line managers that you have in your organization. Your line managers must not just serve as report lines or reporting lines, they must also serve as a ladder with which your team members can grow. A ladder. That means there must be a mentoring system of management in your company. Let me say that again. As a CEOs of a mid-level or a top-level organization, there must be a mentoring system of management where the manager is approachable, the manager is a nurturer, the manager is also a teacher, the manager is also a corrector. All of these things in the manager. Why? Because it's a mentorship system of management. That way, your manager becomes a ladder or a leverage with which everyone in the team rallies around to grow. As they grow, your company grows. You see why this is important, CEO? Now, the final thing that affects employee engagement is processes. It's processes. I'm sure that as a CEO of a mid-level and a top-level organization, you know this more than anything, that a dysfunctional process will lead to a dysfunctional team, will lead to dysfunctional results. If in the past you have, found your way to just use shabby processes to get results, you're not going to be able to scale that way. So I want to say that at the beginning of the year, it is time to review your processes. What worked? What are the leakages? Because if you don't identify the leakages, it will create room for porosity in your organization. And once there's porosity, people can cheat the system. Once people can cheat the system, you can lose money. You can lose credibility. You can lose customers. So make sure that in the beginning of the year, fix your processes so that it doesn't affect the employee engagement, right? And I'm going to wrap up very quickly by also stating again or reiterating the statistics of why it is important to pay attention to the percentage of engaged vis-a-vis disengaged staff in your organization, right? Every time you have an engaged staff, these are the 5 things that happen. Every time you have an engaged workforce, these are the 5 things. So it's easy to say these are the 5 advantages of engaged staffs. And remember that the goal is to move the percentage of your engaged staff from 36 to at least maybe 60%. 36 is fail, is F9, right? If in your organization is 36%, that's a failure. Those 36% will not be able to deliver your revenue goals. And if they are, they will be strained beyond the ordinary. That means the bulk of the work will fall on a specific few. Do you see what I mean? And so these are the advantages of having an engaged workforce. Number 1, it increases your productivity by 17%. Number 2, it increases your customer ratings by 10%. Yes. Imagine that you have improved customer ratings. There's so many organizations at the top level who will give anything to be at the top as far as customer ratings is concerned. Because if you have a positive customer rating, it sells itself. Your brand, your business sells itself. If your customer rating is positive, that means that everywhere people go, they're like, oh, this brand, great. This brand, great. This company, great. And so if you have an engaged workforce, it improves your customer rating by 10%. I do not know any CEO in the mid-level or top level that will pass an opportunity to have a 10% increment in their customer ratings. I do not know any organization. I do not know. Because you as a CEO of a mid-level and top-level organization recognizes that that's your biggest strength. So you have to pay attention to it, right? Now, the other thing it does is it increases sales by at least 20%. An engaged workforce increases sales by at least 20%. It also increases profitability by at least 21%. And finally, it reduces absenteeism. It reduces what? Absenteeism. An engaged workforce will, at every point in time, want to be at work because their work is part of them. A disengaged one will look for every opportunity to call in sick. Do you see why this is important? Now, as a CEO, you've listened to all of these things that are the challenges that you face and how to mitigate them. There are so many things that I have spoken to in this particular video / teachings that I believe that there are CEOs who are wondering, how do I even get started with this? And I said that at the end of today's conversation, I will share with you an absolute way to actually have an increment in your employee engagement. And that absolute way is number 1, execution blueprint. Number 2, an employee engagement system. Employee engagement system. This is so powerful and important for every CEO. If you don't have an employee engagement system because you feel like, well, I'm too busy, I'm not sure I'm going to have time, it's going to affect your revenue very terribly. Okay. And then number 3 is to have an accountability system that is checkable by everybody on the entire reporting line. Now, how do you achieve these things as a CEO? Because it may look like, oh, this is a lot. The very easiest way to achieve this is to bring us in as a consultant. One of the things we do at Justivate Company is to truly help you design an entire market penetration strategy that is geared at helping you increase your revenue by at least 20% per time. By at least 20% per time. So that means when we come into your company, one of the first things we'll do is look at all your products and services that you have. Look at the offers around each of those products. Look at the existing market that you have. Look at the percentage of the overarching market so that we know how to move your market share from what it is to what it should be to deliver your goals. And then the other thing we begin to look at is the team that powers this entire engagement. Once we look at all of this, we'll come up with a working document that addresses the problem statements and then give that working document to you. With that working document, you would have the product, the offers, the launch strategy, and the execution blueprint. I find that as a CEO of a mid-level and a top-level organization, if you have an execution blueprint, you are settled. You are settled for the rest of Q1. You are settled completely. That means that you will have a document like this that every day, every member of your team would open and see what they should do. That's what I mean by an execution blueprint. That means we'll cascade the entire strategy to achieve your 20% increment in revenue. We'll break it down into daily tasks by any department available, by departments I caution to, and then create an accountability system, create deadlines that would enable you achieve that. And one of the bonuses that we give to our clients is one-time check-in with the team members. That means during the course of the month, after the strategy session you have with us, we'll check in with the team to see how they are doing, be it virtually or physically, to just be sure that everything we agreed in the entire execution blueprint is being actioned by the team. Now, I know that there are so many of you who are like, I need to have this. I want to have this. It's very simple. To book us for a strategy session, just go to justetbay.com/strategy session. Strategy-session, pardon me. justetbay.com/strategy-session. What happens when you go here is you're able to book for the strategy session by making the payment. Once you make the payment, it will redirect you to a booking system where you're able to schedule an appointment with the lead consultant in the Just Ebay company and the team, and then we'll then send further a link for us to have our session with you after we have requested certain documents from your company. Do you see what I mean? So it's so easy to book a strategy session. You just go to the link and then you're able to book a strategy session to prepare your company for the best of their Q1 and of course subsequent months in subsequent quarters in year 2023. I believe that you have learned so much from this session today. Every Tuesday, by the grace of God, we'll teach something new to CEOs of mid-level and top-level organization so that they're able to truly use these strategies to achieve the best results in their business. Now, if you know any CEO of a mid-level company or of a top-level organization, please share with them this live broadcast, be it on Instagram, on YouTube, or even on LinkedIn. Do well to share it so that as many CEOs will truly listen to this and be able to understand the challenges they are facing now and how to mitigate them, because we do not want to build businesses that are thriving. You know, this morning as I was just going around the notes that I had prepared for today's class, you know, God started to tell me that one of the reasons I have sent you to go consult for businesses in Africa and governments is so that they are able to build the kind of businesses that would impact the African economy. So for us, it's beyond what we are going to charge you to work with us. It's about the fact that we're invested in your business as an African entrepreneur, because we recognize the overarching agenda of African entrepreneurs to the growth of the African economy. We are so invested in that as an organization. And so because that's what we're invested in, our goal is to make sure that every organization that falls between the mid-level and the top-level organization has the required execution blueprints to deliver on their revenue goals, their growth goals, their people goals. That way, we're building businesses that will impact the African economy, and in no time, we'll begin to have a very productive African continent. These are the things that drive us at the Just Ebay company. And I believe that because this is what drives us, we bring to the table a different kind of passion as far as working with your business is concerned. Our passion is impeccable, is unmatched by any organization in the world. Yes, quote me, because we come to your business as an assignment. We don't just come as clients. That's how we treat our customers, as assignments, because we know that their business matter to the grand scheme of things in the eyes of God and as far as the African continent is concerned. So if you have got value from this, please do well to share it. Share it. Share it. Share it. No, you don't have to wait. This is a different one completely. This is not this is for businesses. It's not it's not a mentoring program. It's a strategy session for your business. Here we focus on your business and we break down your business, giving you what you should do to move it from here to here. Literally, that's what we do, right? It's a game changer session for any organization within the mid-level and top-level organization who is particular about growth. Because one of the things we'll also discuss in this session is how to enter new markets, right? If you're going to take territories, you have to enter into new markets. To enter into new markets, there must be functioning strategy, functioning executable strategy. And that's one of the things we bring to the table in our personal consulting sessions for businesses, right? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everyone who's joined us on Instagram, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and we're going to share this on Facebook. We're going to share this on LinkedIn also. Please do well to share it with as many CEOs as possible that fall within the mid-level or the top-level organization so that they too can truly be able to grow their revenue by at least 20% in Q1 and the rest quarters of the year. Thank you so much for joining. This has been a super engaging and enlightening session. I look forward to next Tuesday where I will teach you something very phenomenal for your business. If you know any CEO who is the CEO of a top level or a mid-level organization, you need to invite them into these sessions because what they'll learn here, they'll pay so much to have somebody come and train their organization. Believe me. And they will learn uncommon wisdom, uncommon strategy, uncommon pointers that will move their businesses further down. If you have been a part of this session, you will see how I brought the skills of HR, I brought the skills of sales, I brought the skills of marketing all to one session to arm you with requisite knowledge to move. And I know that if you action the things I have taught you here today alone, you will see a minimal shift in your business. Minimal shift, at least just by actioning the things that you have learned here today. Thank you again so much for joining, and I look forward to seeing you again this time next week by the grace of God. Please share with as many people as possible. Put it on your stories, put it in your status, post it on your page. You could just cut a bit of this video, right? Just a bit of this video, highlights of this video, and post it and say, if you're a CEO of a mid-level and a top-level organization and you're looking for a consulting firm that would help you grow your business, go to this company, right? And just a mention like that on your pages would appreciate that so much as a company. Thank you all so very much and have a fantastic day.